The little girl's body hit the dirt like a rag doll. Her legs twisted beneath her, useless. She clawed at the ground, dragging herself inch by inch toward the iron gate of the biggest ranch in Cedar Creek, Texas. "Please," she whispered through cracked lips. "One night. Just one night." Behind that gate stood Samuel Thornton, the coldest, richest man in 3 counties. A man who hadn't smiled in 7 years. A man who swore he'd never let another soul into his life. But this dying child was about to change everything. Subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The iron gate groaned as Clara Bennett pressed her small body against it. Her fingers, raw and bleeding, wrapped around the bars. "Hello?" Her voice came out weak, barely a whisper. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered her. She tried again, louder this time, though it cost her everything she had left. "Please, I need help." Nothing moved beyond that gate. Just the endless stretch of land, the big white house sitting like a ghost in the summer heat. Clara looked down at her legs. They'd stopped working 3 days ago. Just gave out while she was walking through the brush outside of town. One moment she was fine. The next, she was face down in the dirt, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make them move right. Mama had said it was the fever, said it would pass. But Mama wasn't here anymore. Clara gritted her teeth and started pulling herself forward again. Her dress tore against the gravel. Her elbows screamed in pain. But she kept moving. She had to. Samuel Thornton stood at his study window, whiskey glass in hand, watching the dust devils spin across his land. "Mr. Thornton?" He didn't turn around. "What is it, Henry?" His foreman shifted his weight in the doorway. "There's something at the front gate, sir." "Something?" "A child, sir. Little girl. She's—" Henry paused. "She's in bad shape." Samuel took a slow sip of his whiskey. "Then fetch the sheriff. Have him deal with it." "Sir, she's asking for help. She can't walk. Looks like she's been crawling for miles." "Not my concern." Henry didn't move. Samuel could feel the man's eyes boring into his back. "With respect, Mr. Thornton, she's just a child." Samuel finally turned. His face was hard, unreadable. The scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw caught the light. "I said it's not my concern. Every drifter and beggar in Texas knows this ranch. They come looking for handouts. I won't encourage it." "This ain't a beggar, sir. This is a dying little girl." The 2 men stared at each other. Samuel set his glass down. Hard. "Fine. I'll handle it myself." Clara had stopped moving by the time the gate swung open. She lay curled on her side, arms wrapped around herself, eyes half closed. Heavy boots stopped in front of her. "Get up." The voice was cold, flat, like stone scraping against stone. Clara forced her eyes open. She looked up at the tallest man she'd ever seen. Broad shoulders, dark hair streaked with gray. A face that looked like it had been carved from granite and then left out in the rain for 100 years. "I can't," she whispered. "What do you mean you can't?" "My legs don't work, sir. I've been trying, but they won't move right." Samuel Thornton looked down at this creature in the dirt. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Dress torn to rags, hair matted with dust and sweat, skin so pale it was almost translucent. "Where are your parents?" Clara's chin trembled. "Mama's dead, sir. Died 4 days ago. The fever took her." "And your father?" "Never knew him." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Where did you come from?" "Town, Cedar Creek. But they wouldn't let me stay. Mrs. Patterson said I was cursed, said the fever would spread. They ran me out." "They ran out a crippled child?" Clara nodded slowly. I tried to walk to the next town, but my legs gave out on the road. I saw your house from the hill. Took me 2 days to crawl here." Samuel stood completely still. 2 days. This child had crawled for 2 days across the Texas scrubland in the middle of summer. No water, no food, no shade. And she was still alive. He crouched down, bringing his face level with hers. Up close, he could see her eyes were green, bright green, like new grass after the spring rains. They were filled with pain, but also something else: determination. "What's your name, girl?" "Clara, sir. Clara Bennett." Clara. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. "What exactly do you want from me?" "Just one night, sir. Let me sleep somewhere safe. Give my legs a chance to rest." "I'll be gone by morning. I promise I won't be any trouble." Samuel studied her face. She wasn't begging, wasn't crying, wasn't trying to manipulate him with tears or trembling lips. She was simply stating facts. Something shifted in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. "Henry!" he called out, not taking his eyes off the girl. The foreman appeared instantly. "Yes, sir?" "Fetch Dr. Morrison. Tell him it's urgent." Henry's eyebrows shot up. "Sir? Did I stutter? Get the doctor. Now." "Yes, sir." As Henry ran toward the stables, Samuel looked back down at Clara. "I'm going to pick you up now. It might hurt." Clara nodded. "I'm used to hurting, sir." Something in those words hit Samuel harder than he expected. He pushed the feeling aside and slid his arms beneath her. She weighed almost nothing, like a bundle of sticks wrapped in cotton. He straightened up and started walking toward the house. Clara's head lolled against his shoulder. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided what to do with you." "That's all right. You didn't leave me in the dirt. That's more than anyone else did." Samuel's stride faltered for just a moment. Then he kept walking. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hawkins, nearly dropped her tray when Samuel walked through the front door carrying a child. "Mr. Thornton, what on earth?" "Prepare the guest room on the first floor, the one near the kitchen. She can't climb stairs."
"But, sir—"
"Now, Mrs. Hawkins." The old woman hurried away, casting bewildered looks over her shoulder. Samuel carried Clara through the house, past the grand staircase, past the portrait of a beautiful woman that hung above the fireplace. He never looked at that portrait. And into a small, sunlit room near the back of the house. He laid Clara on the bed gently. She winced as her legs straightened out. "Sorry," he said gruffly.
"It's okay."
Clara looked around the room with wide eyes.
"This is beautiful, sir. I've never been in a room this nice."
"It's just a room."
"Not to me."
Mrs. Hawkins bustled in with fresh linens and a pitcher of water. She took one look at Clara, and her stern expression melted. "Oh, you poor lamb. Look at the state of you." She turned to Samuel.
"Sir, she needs a bath, clean clothes, and a proper meal. When did she last eat?"
Samuel looked at Clara. "When did you last eat?" Clara had to think about it.
"Tuesday, I think. Mrs. Patterson gave me some bread before she made me leave."
"That was 4 days ago," Mrs. Hawkins breathed. Samuel's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Feed her, gently, small amounts. I don't want her getting sick. And get her cleaned up before the doctor arrives." He turned to leave.
"Mr. Thornton?"
He stopped, but didn't turn around. Clara's voice was soft, tired.
"What's your name, sir? You never said."
A long pause. "Samuel. Samuel Thornton."
"Thank you, Mr. Samuel."
He walked out without another word. Dr. Morrison arrived an hour later. He was a thin man with kind eyes and silver spectacles that perpetually slid down his nose. Samuel met him at the front door. "Where's the patient?" Dr. Morrison asked, already opening his medical bag. "This way." They walked to Clara's room in silence. When they entered, the girl was propped up against the pillows, freshly bathed and dressed in a clean nightgown that was several sizes too big. Mrs. Hawkins had braided her hair into 2 neat plaits. She looked like a different child, but her legs still lay motionless beneath the blanket. "Hello there," Dr. Morrison said warmly, pulling a chair up to the bedside. "I'm Dr. Morrison. I'm going to take a look at you, all right?" Clara nodded. Samuel stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. The examination took nearly 30 minutes. Dr. Morrison tested Clara's reflexes, asked her dozens of questions, poked and prodded with gentle precision. Finally, he straightened up and removed his spectacles. "Can we speak privately, Mr. Thornton?" They stepped into the hallway. "Well?" Samuel demanded. Dr. Morrison sighed. "It's not good, I'm afraid. The paralysis in her legs is likely a result of the fever she had. It can happen. The illness affects the nerves, damages the muscles. Sometimes it's temporary. Sometimes it's permanent." "Yes." Samuel stared at the wall. "What are her chances?" "If she's well fed, well rested, and given proper care, there's a chance, maybe 30%, that she could regain some mobility over the next few months. But she'll need constant attention, physical therapy, good nutrition, and most importantly, she'll need stability, a safe place to recover." "And if she doesn't get those things?" Dr. Morrison's face was grave. "Then she'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Or worse, if the fever returns and she's out on the streets, she won't survive it." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you, Doctor. Mrs. Hawkins will see you out." "What are you going to do with her, Samuel?" The use of his first name made Samuel stiffen. He and Morrison had known each other for 20 years. They weren't friends exactly, but they had history. "I don't know yet." Dr. Morrison put a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "She reminds me of someone. I think you see it too." Samuel's face went cold. "Don't. I'm just saying, I said don't." Dr. Morrison nodded slowly and picked up his bag. "I'll come back in 3 days to check on her. Try to get some broth into her. And Samuel?" Samuel waited. "That little girl in there? She's a fighter. I've never seen a child survive what she's been through. Whatever you decide, don't let that spirit break." He left. Samuel stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the closed door to Clara's room. That night, Samuel couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, the same glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at the portrait above the fireplace that he always pretended wasn't there. Elizabeth, his wife, dead 7 years now, and next to her in the portrait, a small figure with dark hair and a mischievous smile. Lily, his daughter. The fever had taken them both in the same week. Samuel had buried them on the hill behind the house, beneath the old oak tree. He hadn't visited the graves in 3 years, couldn't bring himself to. Now there was a little girl sleeping in his house. A little girl with green eyes and a fighting spirit. A little girl who was sick and scared and had nowhere else to go. A little girl who was not his daughter. He drained the whiskey in one swallow. The glass shattered against the fireplace. Clara woke to the sound of breaking glass. Her heart pounded. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft. The room was too quiet. Where was the sound of Mama coughing? Where was the leaky roof dripping into the bucket in the corner? Then she remembered. Mama was gone. She was in the big house, the rich man's house, the man with the scar and the cold eyes who had carried her like she weighed nothing at all. Clara heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy. Slow. They stopped outside her door. She held her breath. The door didn't open. After a long moment, the footsteps moved away. Clara exhaled. She looked down at her legs, hidden beneath the thick blanket. She tried to move her toes, concentrated with everything she had. Nothing. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. Mama had always said crying was for people who had given up. And Clara Bennett had never given up on anything in her life. She closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. She would walk again, no matter what it took, no matter how long it took. She would stand on her own 2 feet, and she would prove to everyone, to Mrs. Patterson, to the townspeople who had thrown her out like garbage, to the cold man with the scarred face, that she was not cursed. She was not broken. She was Clara Bennett, and she was going to survive. Morning came with the smell of bacon and fresh bread. Mrs. Hawkins appeared in the doorway with a tray.
Good morning, lamb. How did you sleep?
Better than I have in a long time, ma'am.
That's good to hear.
The housekeeper set the tray on Clara's lap.
Now, you eat every bite, you hear? Doctor's orders.
Clara looked at the food. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast with butter, a glass of milk. More food than she'd seen in weeks. Her hands trembled as she picked up the fork.
Take it slow, Mrs. Hawkins said gently. Your stomach needs to get used to eating again.
Clara nodded and took a small bite of egg. It was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted.
Mrs. Hawkins? Yes, lamb. Is Mr. Samuel angry that I'm here?
The housekeeper's expression flickered.
Mr. Thornton is complicated. He's been through a lot. Lost people he loved. It made him hard. Hard doesn't mean bad.
Mrs. Hawkins blinked.
No, I suppose it doesn't. He saved me.
He could have left me at the gate. Everyone else did. But he didn't. The old woman smiled softly.
You're a wise little thing, aren't you?
Clara shrugged. Mama used to say I was stubborn as a mule.
That's not a bad thing to be. Not in this world.
Samuel watched from the window as Henry exercised the horses in the paddock. You're still here. He turned. Clara was sitting in a wheelchair that Mrs. Hawkins had dug out of the storage shed. The chair had belonged to his mother-in-law years ago. You shouldn't be out of bed, Samuel said.
I'm tired of lying down. Mrs. Hawkins said I could sit in the chair if I promised not to try rolling myself around.
And are you keeping that promise? Clara's mouth twitched.
Mostly.
Samuel felt something strange tug at the corner of his lips. He suppressed it. I spoke to the sheriff this morning, he said. Clara's face went still.
Are you sending me to the orphanage?
There isn't one. Not for 100 miles. And even if there was, they wouldn't take a child who can't walk.
Then where am I going?
Samuel turned back to the window. Nowhere. Yet.
What does that mean?
It means I haven't decided. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then,
Mr.
Samuel?
What?
Why did you save me? You don't seem like the kind of man who helps people. Samuel's jaw tightened. No, I'm not. Then why? He didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Because leaving a child to die in the dirt isn't something I'm willing to have on my conscience, even a conscience as black as mine. Clara considered this. I don't think your conscience is black, sir. You don't know anything about me. I know you carried me when my legs wouldn't carry me. I know you called the doctor. I know you let me sleep in a real bed for the first time in my life. She paused. Mrs. Patterson called me cursed, said I was punishment from God. But you didn't call me anything. You just helped.
Samuel finally looked at her. This child, this strange, fierce, broken child who had crawled through hell to reach his gate. "What do you want from me, Clara Bennett?" "I told you. Just one night."
"It's been 2 nights now."
"I know. I'm sorry. I can leave today if you want. Mrs. Hawkins can push me to the road, and I'll figure something out."
"Don't be ridiculous."
"I'm not trying to be a burden, sir."
"You're not—" Samuel stopped himself, took a breath. "You're not a burden. You're a complication."
"Is that better or worse?"
"I haven't decided that either." Clara smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, like a flower pushing through a crack in the sidewalk. And Samuel Thornton, who hadn't smiled in 7 years, felt something crack in his chest. That afternoon, Henry knocked on the study door. "Come in." The foreman entered, hat in hand. "Sir, you should know. Word's gotten around town about the girl." Samuel looked up from his desk. "What kind of word?" "The bad kind. Mrs. Patterson's been telling everyone you took in a cursed child. That you've gone soft. Some of the men at the saloon are making jokes about it." "Let them joke." Henry hesitated. "There's more. A few folks are saying you should send her away. That keeping a crippled orphan is a waste of resources. That it ain't natural for a man like you to be caring for a child." Samuel's eyes went cold. "A man like me?" "Their words, sir, not mine." "And what do you think, Henry?" The foreman met his gaze steadily. "I think you did the right thing, and I think anyone who's got a problem with it can go straight to hell." Samuel nodded slowly. "Good, because that girl is staying, at least until she's well enough to decide her own future." Henry's eyebrows rose. "Sir? You heard me. Tell Mrs. Hawkins to prepare a proper room, not the guest room, something permanent. And find out if there's anyone in town who knows about physical therapy, exercises for damaged legs." "Yes, sir." Henry turned to go. "Henry." "Sir? If anyone from town comes here to cause trouble for that child, you have my permission to shoot first and ask questions later." Henry grinned. "With pleasure, sir." Clara heard everything. She'd wheeled herself to the hallway, breaking her promise to Mrs. Hawkins, and listened through the study door. Her heart was pounding. He was letting her stay. Not forever, but longer than one night. Longer than she dared to hope. She wheeled herself back to her room as quietly as she could, her arms burning from the effort. When she reached the bed, she pulled herself up onto it and lay there, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in weeks, Clara Bennett allowed herself to cry. Not tears of sadness, tears of hope. 3 days turned into a week turned into 2. Clara watched the routine of the ranch unfold around her like a dance she was slowly learning the steps to. Cowboys came and went. Horses thundered across the fields. Mrs. Hawkins hummed while she cooked. And Samuel Thornton remained a ghost in his own house, present but untouchable, close but impossibly far. She hadn't spoken to him since that day in the hallway. "He's watching you, though," Mrs. Hawkins said one morning, setting a plate of hotcakes in front of Clara. "Don't think he isn't." "Watching me?" "From his study window. Every time you're in the garden with that wheelchair, his eyes are on you. Hasn't done that since—" The housekeeper stopped herself. "Since what?" Mrs. Hawkins shook her head. "Never mind, lamb. Eat your breakfast." But Clara had learned to read silences, and this one was heavy with grief. She pushed herself harder that day. Arms screaming, she wheeled herself around the garden path until her palms were raw and bleeding. She didn't stop, didn't complain, just kept moving. If Samuel Thornton was watching, she wanted him to see someone worth saving. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Henry brought it to Samuel's study, his face grim. "This came from town, sir, delivered by one of Patterson's boys." Samuel took the envelope. His name was written in sharp, angry script. He tore it open. His jaw tightened as he read. "What does it say?" Henry asked. Samuel crumpled the paper in his fist. "The town council has requested a meeting. They want to discuss the situation at my ranch." "The situation being Clara?" "The situation being a child they threw out like garbage, who I had the audacity to save." Henry spat on the floor. "Bunch of hypocrites." "Hypocrites with influence. Half my cattle contracts go through merchants in Cedar Creek. They could make things difficult." "You thinking of giving in to them?" Samuel looked up. His eyes were cold fire. "What do you think?" Henry grinned. "I think I'd better polish my rifle." "That won't be necessary. Yet." Samuel stood and walked to the window. Clara was in the garden again, struggling to wheel herself up a small incline. She failed. Tried again. Failed again. On the third try, she made it. "Sir," Henry said, "tell them I'll attend their meeting. Friday. Town Hall, noon." "And Clara?" "Clara stays here, where she's safe." Clara didn't learn about the meeting until Thursday night. She overheard Mrs. Hawkins talking to one of the kitchen maids. Their voices carried through the thin walls. "They're saying he's lost his mind, taking in a crippled orphan. Mrs. Patterson's calling it an abomination." "What do you think, Mrs. Hawkins?" "I think that child is the best thing that's happened to this ranch in 7 years, and anyone who says otherwise can answer to me." Clara smiled in the darkness of her room, but the smile faded when she heard the rest. "The meeting tomorrow. Do you think they'll force him to give her up?" "Over my dead body, and over his, I reckon. That man's stubborn as a mule when he sets his mind to something." "But if the whole town's against him?" "Then the whole town can go hang." Clara lay awake for hours after that, staring at the ceiling. They wanted to take her away. They wanted to send her somewhere else, somewhere she'd be alone again, thrown away again, forgotten again. She couldn't let that happen. She wouldn't. Friday morning, Clara did something she hadn't done since arriving at the ranch. She got out of bed by herself. It took everything she had. Her arms trembled as she pulled herself to the edge of the mattress. Her legs hung uselessly, dead weight dragging her down. But she kept going. She slid off the bed and landed hard on the floor. Pain shot through her hip. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Then she started crawling. Inch by inch, she pulled herself across the room, past the dresser, past the chair, toward the door. By the time she reached the hallway, her nightgown was soaked with sweat. "Clara!" Mrs. Hawkins dropped the basket of laundry she was carrying. "Child, what are you doing? You'll hurt yourself." "I need to talk to Mr. Samuel. He's getting ready to leave for town. You can't. I need to talk to him." "Now, please." Something in Clara's voice made the housekeeper pause. She looked at this little girl sprawled on the hardwood floor, determination blazing in her green eyes, and she made a decision. "Stay here. Don't move." Mrs. Hawkins hurried away. 2 minutes later, heavy footsteps approached. Samuel stopped dead when he saw Clara on the floor. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I crawled here." "You what?" "I crawled because I need to talk to you, and I couldn't wait." Samuel crouched down, his face a mixture of anger and something else, something that looked almost like fear. "You could have called for someone. You could have rung the bell by your bed." This was more important. "Nothing is more important than your safety." The words hung in the air between them. Clara's heart pounded. "You're going to town, to that meeting." Samuel's expression closed off. "That's none of your concern." "They want to take me away." "Clara, I heard Mrs. Hawkins talking." "The townspeople think you're crazy for keeping me. They want you to give me up." Her voice cracked. "Are you going to?" Samuel stared at her. This child who had crawled across a room just to ask him a question. This child who had dragged herself through the Texas desert with broken legs. This child who refused, absolutely refused, to give up. "No." "Promise me." "Clara, promise me, Mr. Samuel. Promise you won't let them take me." Something shifted in Samuel's face. The hard mask cracked, just for a moment, and beneath it, Clara saw something raw, something wounded, something human. "I promise." Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Samuel reached down and lifted her off the floor. He carried her back to her room and set her gently on the bed. "You need to rest." "I'm tired of resting." "I know, but resting is how you'll get stronger. And getting stronger is how you'll prove everyone wrong." Clara looked up at him.
Is that what you're doing? Proving everyone wrong?
Samuel's jaw tightened. "I'm doing what's right. There's a difference."
Maybe. But maybe they're the same thing sometimes.
He didn't answer, just turned and walked toward the door.
"Mr. Samuel?"
He stopped.
"Whatever they say to you at that meeting, don't believe them. You're not crazy. You're not wrong. You're the only person who ever treated me like I mattered."
Samuel stood frozen in the doorway. Then, without turning around, he said, "You do matter, Clara. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." He walked away. And Clara, for the second time since arriving at this ranch, allowed herself to hope. The town hall was packed. Samuel walked in alone, his boots echoing against the wooden floor. Every head turned, every eye tracked him as he made his way to the front of the room. Mayor Wilson sat at a long table with 3 council members. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, her face twisted with righteous satisfaction. "Mr. Thornton," the mayor said, his voice oily with false politeness, "thank you for joining us. Let's make this quick. I've got a ranch to run." The mayor's smile tightened. "Yes, well, we've received some concerns from members of our community about recent developments at your property." Concerns. Regarding the child. Samuel crossed his arms. "Her name is Clara." "Yes, Clara." The mayor shuffled some papers. "It's come to our attention that you've taken in an orphan. A sick orphan. One who was, removed from our town due to health concerns." "Removed." Samuel's voice was flat. "Is that what you're calling it? I call it abandoning a dying child in the desert." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson shot to her feet. "That child is cursed. Her mother died of fever, and she carries the same sickness. Keeping her here puts the whole county at risk." Dr. Morrison examined her. "She's not contagious. Doctors can be wrong, and townspeople can be cruel. Which seems more likely to you?" The room fell silent. Mayor Wilson cleared his throat. "Mr. Thornton, we understand your charitable impulses, but you must consider the welfare of the community. If that child spreads disease, she won't. But if she does, she won't." Samuel took a step forward. "And I'll tell you something else. Even if she could spread every disease known to man, I still wouldn't throw her out. Because that's not what decent people do. That's what cowards do."
Mrs. Patterson's face went red. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm right. You threw out a crippled little girl because you were afraid. You let her crawl through the desert for 2 days because it was easier than showing mercy. And now you have the audacity to stand here and lecture me about community welfare?" Samuel looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes.
Every single one of you walked past that child. Every single one of you had the chance to help. And not one of you did. So don't come to me with your concerns and your fears and your righteous indignation. I did what you should have done. I acted like a human being. The silence was deafening. Mayor Wilson swallowed hard. "Mr. Thornton, I must insist. Insist on what? What exactly are you going to do? Force me to give her up? Send the sheriff to take her away? Try it. See what happens. Is that a threat? It's a promise. That child is under my protection, and anyone who tries to take her from my ranch will answer to me personally." He turned and walked toward the door. "This isn't over, Thornton," Mrs. Patterson shrieked after him. "You'll regret this." Samuel stopped, turned. His eyes locked onto hers. "No, ma'am, I won't. But you might." He walked out into the blazing Texas sun. The ride back to the ranch was long. Samuel pushed his horse harder than usual, trying to outrun the anger still burning in his chest. He hadn't felt this way in years, this protective rage, this fierce determination to shield something fragile from a cruel world. It scared him, because the last time he'd felt this way, he'd failed. He'd failed Elizabeth, failed Lily, failed to save them from the fever that had swept through the county like a scythe. He'd sat by their beds and watched them die, helpless, useless, broken. And then he'd buried them and sworn he'd never feel that way again. Never love anything, never protect anything, never risk his heart on something he could lose. But Clara had crawled through his defenses like she'd crawled through the desert. Slowly, stubbornly, impossibly. And now he was making promises he might not be able to keep. Samuel reined in his horse at the top of the hill overlooking his ranch. The white house gleamed in the summer heat. Beyond it, he could see the garden where Clara practiced with her wheelchair. She was there now. Even from this distance, he could see her struggling, could see her arms pumping, her body leaning forward, her face set with concentration. She fell. Samuel's heart lurched, but before he could kick his horse into motion, she was already pulling herself back up, already grabbing the wheels, already trying again. Something cracked inside him. Not the hard shell he'd built around himself. Something deeper, something older, something that felt dangerously like hope. Clara heard the hoofbeats before she saw him. She stopped her exercises and turned toward the approaching rider. Samuel's face was hard to read. It always was. But something seemed different. Lighter, maybe. Or heavier. She couldn't tell which. "How was the meeting?" she asked as he dismounted. "Loud." "Did they try to make you give me up?" "Yes." Clara's stomach dropped, and Samuel walked over and crouched beside her wheelchair. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since she had arrived at the ranch, she saw something warm in them. "And I told them no, in no uncertain terms." The breath rushed out of Clara's lungs. "Really?" "Really. You're staying, Clara, for as long as you want. This is your home now." Home. The word hit her like a thunderclap. She'd never had a real home. Just a leaky shack where she and Mama struggled to survive. Just a series of temporary shelters, temporary kindnesses, temporary hopes that always evaporated like morning dew. But this big white house with its stubborn owner
and its kind housekeeper and its endless fields. This could be home. Mr. Samuel? Yes? Why are you doing this? Really? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because I lost someone once. Someone I loved more than anything. And I couldn't save her. I couldn't do anything but watch her die.
He swallowed hard. When I found you at that gate, I thought maybe this was my chance to save someone, to prove that all that pain wasn't for nothing. Clara reached out and took his hand. It was a small gesture, a child's gesture, but it held more meaning than either of them could express. You already saved me, Mr. Samuel. The day you carried me through that gate. Everything else is just extra. Samuel's hand tightened around hers. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Samuel cleared his throat and stood up. Mrs. Hawkins is making pot roast for dinner. You should get cleaned up. Yes, sir. And Clara? Yes? No more crawling across floors. If you need me, you ring that bell. Understood? Clara smiled. Understood. She wheeled herself toward the house, and Samuel watched her go. Behind him, Henry appeared. Saw you riding back like the devil was chasing you. Meeting go bad? Meeting went exactly how I expected. The town wants her gone. And they can go to hell. Henry laughed. That's what I figured. What happens now? Samuel watched Clara disappear through the kitchen door. Now we make sure she gets better. Find someone who knows about damaged legs. Get her the best care money can buy. You're serious about this? Dead serious. Henry nodded slowly. You know people are going to talk. They'll say you've gone soft. Say the great Samuel Thornton finally cracked. Let them talk. And what about when they do more than talk? You saw Patterson's face. She's not going to let this go. Samuel's expression hardened. Then we'll deal with it. Whatever comes, we deal with it. That girl in there has been through more than any child should have to endure. The least I can do is stand between her and anyone who wants to hurt her again. Even if it costs you? Even if it costs me everything. Henry studied his boss, this man he'd worked for 15 years, this man he'd seen broken and rebuilt and broken again. You care about her. Samuel didn't answer. It's okay, you know, to care about something again. It doesn't make you weak. Caring is what got me hurt before. No, caring is what made you human. Losing what you cared about is what hurt you. But hiding from it? That's not living, boss. That's just existing. Samuel turned and looked at his foreman. When did you become a philosopher? Henry grinned. Been spending too much time with Mrs. Hawkins. She's a bad influence. Despite himself, Samuel almost smiled. Almost. That night, Clara heard voices outside her window. She pulled herself up and peered through the glass. Two figures stood near the garden gate, shadows in the moonlight. One was tall, broad-shouldered, Samuel. The other was shorter, rounder, a stranger. Their voices were too low to make out words, but the tone was clear, angry, threatening. Clara watched Samuel step forward, his body rigid with tension. The stranger stepped back, said something sharp, then turned and disappeared into the darkness. Samuel stood motionless for a long moment. Then he looked up, directly at Clara's window. Their eyes met through the glass. Samuel nodded once, slowly. A promise, a reassurance. Clara nodded back. Whatever that stranger had wanted, whatever threat he'd made, Samuel had handled it. Samuel would always handle it, because that's what family did. And somewhere, somehow, this scarred rancher and this broken little girl had become exactly that. Family.
Clara didn't know it yet, couldn't possibly know. But that stranger in the darkness was just the beginning. Mrs. Patterson had made her move, and the battle for Clara Bennett's future was only getting started. The next morning, the dead animal appeared on the front porch. Mrs. Hawkins screamed. Samuel came running, gun drawn, expecting the worst.
What he found was worse, in a different way. A coyote, shot clean through the head, draped across the top step like a warning. There was a note pinned to its fur. Samuel pulled it free and read the words scrawled in that same sharp, angry script. "Give up the cursed child, or you're next." He crumpled the paper in his fist. "Sir?" Henry appeared beside him, face pale. "What do we do?" Samuel looked at the dead animal, at the note, at the fear in his foreman's eyes. "We protect what's ours." "And if they come back?" Samuel's eyes went cold. "Then we show them why they should have stayed away." Samuel didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study with his rifle across his lap, watching the darkness through the window. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound made his finger twitch toward the trigger. Mrs. Hawkins had scrubbed the porch until her hands were raw, but the stain remained. The memory remained. The threat remained. "You should get some rest." Samuel turned. Clara was in the doorway, her wheelchair catching the lamplight. "I told you to stay in bed." "I couldn't sleep either." She wheeled herself closer. "I heard what happened. Mrs. Hawkins told me." "She shouldn't have done that." "I'm glad she did. I'm not a baby, Mr. Samuel. I can handle the truth." Samuel looked at this child, this fierce, stubborn, impossible child, and felt his heart constrict. "The truth is ugly sometimes." "I know. The truth is usually ugly. But lying about it doesn't make it prettier." Samuel almost smiled. Almost. "Where did you learn to talk like that?" "Mama. She said the world was full of people who'd rather look away than see what's really there. She said the brave ones are the ones who keep their eyes open, even when it hurts." "Your mama sounds like a wise woman." "She was." Clara's voice cracked slightly. "She was the wisest person I ever knew, until she got sick and the world stopped caring." Samuel set his rifle aside and crouched in front of her wheelchair. "Clara, I need you to understand something. What happened today, the threat, it's because of me, because I took you in. These people, they're trying to scare me into giving you up." "Will it work?" "No." "Then why are you worried?" Samuel hesitated. "Because scared people do desperate things, and desperate people can be dangerous." Clara reached out and touched his scarred face. Her small fingers traced the line that ran from his eyebrow to his jaw. "How did you get this?" The question caught him off guard. "That's a story for another time." "Tell me now. Please. I want to know." Samuel closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were filled with something Clara had never seen before. Pain. Raw, unfiltered pain. "There was a fire," he said quietly. 7 years ago. The barn caught fire in the middle of the night. My wife, Elizabeth, she ran in before I could stop her. Our daughter was in there, Lily. She'd snuck out to see the new foal. Clara's breath caught. I went in after them, found Lily first, carried her out, but by the time I went back for Elizabeth..." He stopped, swallowed hard. The roof collapsed. A burning beam caught my face. I barely made it out alive. "And Elizabeth?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "She didn't make it." "And Lily?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing Clara had ever heard. "The smoke," Samuel finally said. "She'd breathed in too much." The doctor said her lungs were damaged beyond repair. She lasted 3 more days. Tears streamed down Clara's face.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Samuel.
Don't be. It was a long time ago.
Pain doesn't care about time. Mama taught me that too.
Samuel looked at her. This little girl who understood grief better than most adults. This little girl who had lost everything and still found the strength to keep fighting. No, he said softly. I suppose it doesn't. They sat together in the darkness, 2 broken people who had somehow found each other. And for the first time in 7 years, Samuel Thornton didn't feel quite so alone. Morning brought trouble. A rider appeared at the gate just after sunrise. Not a stranger this time. Sheriff Tom Daniels, his badge catching the early light. Samuel met him in the yard, rifle in hand. Tom! Samuel! The sheriff dismounted, his face grim. We need to talk. About the threat on my porch? Among other things, can we go inside? Say what you need to say right here. The sheriff sighed. Fine. Mrs. Patterson filed a formal complaint this morning. She's claiming you're harboring a public health hazard. She's got signatures from half the town council. And what does that mean exactly? It means I've been ordered to investigate, to assess whether the child poses a legitimate threat to the community. Samuel's grip tightened on his rifle. Clara is not a threat. Dr. Morrison cleared her. I know, but the complaint's been filed. I have to follow procedure. Procedure, Samuel spat the word. Is that what you call it when a mob of cowards goes after a crippled child? I don't like this any more than you do, but if I don't do my job, they'll find someone who will, and that someone might not be as sympathetic to your situation. Samuel studied the sheriff's face. They'd known each other for 20 years. Tom Daniels had been at Elizabeth's funeral, had helped Samuel rebuild after the fire, had stood by him when everyone else turned away. What do you need? Just to see her, talk to her, verify that she's being cared for properly. If I can report back that she's healthy and safe, it might quiet things down. And if it doesn't? Tom's expression darkened. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Samuel led the sheriff inside. Clara was at the kitchen table, eating breakfast under Mrs. Hawkins' watchful eye. She looked up when the 2 men entered.
Hello,
she said calmly. Tom knelt beside her chair. Hello there, I'm Sheriff Daniels. You must be Clara.
Yes, sir.
I heard you've been through quite an ordeal. How are you feeling? Clara glanced at Samuel. He gave her a small nod.
Better, she said. My legs still don't work right, but Mrs. Hawkins says I'm getting stronger every day.
That's good to hear. Can I ask you a few questions?
Yes, sir.
The sheriff's questions were gentle but thorough. Where had she come from? How had she ended up at the ranch? Was Mr. Thornton treating her well? Did she feel safe here? Clara answered each one honestly, her voice steady and clear. When she was done, Tom stood and turned to Samuel. I've seen enough.
And?
And I'm going back to town to tell Mrs. Patterson she's wasting everyone's time. That child is healthier and happier than half the kids in Cedar Creek. Whatever fever she had, it's gone. She's not a threat to anyone. Samuel exhaled slowly.
Thank you, Tom.
Don't thank me yet. This isn't over. Patterson's got money, influence, and a grudge the size of Texas. She won't stop until she gets what she wants. What does she want? Tom looked at him steadily. She wants to destroy you, Samuel. The girl is just the excuse. After the sheriff left, Samuel found Clara in the garden. She'd wheeled herself to the edge of the property, near the fence that separated the yard from the open rangeland. Her face was turned toward the distant hills. What are you thinking about? Clara didn't turn around.
I'm thinking about what the sheriff said, about Mrs. Patterson wanting to destroy you.
Samuel lowered himself onto a nearby bench. You heard that?
I hear most things. People forget that just because my legs don't work doesn't mean my ears are broken.
Fair point.
Clara finally turned to face him. Why does she hate you so much? It can't just be about me.
Samuel was quiet for a long moment.
It's not about you at all, he finally said. It's about something that happened a long time ago, before the fire, before Elizabeth died. What happened? Mrs. Patterson had a son, Jacob. He worked on my ranch for a few years. Good kid, hard worker, but he got mixed up with some bad people. Started stealing from me, selling my cattle to rustlers across the border. What did you do? What I had to. I turned him in to the sheriff. He went to prison. Died there 2 years later. Fever took him, same as it takes so many. Clara's eyes widened. And she blames you. She blames me for everything. For turning him in. For not giving him another chance. For not saving him somehow. Samuel's voice hardened. She thinks if I'd looked the other way, he'd still be alive. Maybe she's right. Maybe I should have. But he was stealing from you. He was. And I did what I thought was right. But right and easy aren't always the same thing, Clara. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you more than you ever imagined. Clara was silent for a moment. Then, "She's never going to stop, is she?" "No, probably not."
Then what do we do?
Samuel looked at her, this child who had become, against all odds, the most important person in his life. We stand our ground, we fight, and we don't give up, no matter what. Clara nodded slowly.
That's what Mama would say.
Then your mama and I would have gotten along. For the first time that day, Clara smiled. The attack came 2 nights later. Samuel was asleep when the shouting started. He grabbed his rifle and ran outside in his bare feet. 3 riders were circling the paddock, torches in hand, faces covered with bandanas. "Thornton!" one of them screamed. "Give up the girl!" Samuel raised his rifle. "Get off my land!" "You got 1 day, Thornton. 1 day to hand her over, or we burn this whole place to the ground." They threw their torches toward the barn. Samuel fired. The lead rider jerked backward, his torch falling harmlessly to the dirt. The other 2 wheeled their horses and fled into the darkness. Henry came running from the bunkhouse, shotgun in hand. "Boss, you hit?" "No. Check the barn. Make sure nothing caught fire." Samuel stood in the yard, breathing hard, watching the dust settle where the riders had disappeared. This was war now. Real war. And he had no intention of losing. By morning, word had spread through the county. Samuel Thornton had shot one of Mrs. Patterson's hired hands. The man was alive, barely, at the doctor's office in town. Mrs. Patterson was screaming for Samuel's arrest. Half the town was calling him a hero. The other half was calling him a murderer. Dr. Morrison rode out to the ranch around noon. "Samuel, you've stepped in it this time." "I defended my property, my family." "I know, and I don't blame you. But Patterson's got the mayor in her pocket. She's pushing for charges." "On what grounds? Those men came onto my land with torches. They threatened to burn down my home." "And you shot one of them." "I'd do it again." The doctor sighed. "I'm sure you would. That's what worries me." Samuel walked to the window. Clara was in the garden with Mrs. Hawkins, practicing her exercises. Her arms were stronger now, her movements more confident. "How long do I have?" "Before what?" "Before they come for me. With badges this time, instead of torches." "I don't know. A day, maybe 2. Tom's doing what he can to slow things down, but his hands are tied." Samuel nodded slowly. "Then I need to end this. before they take me away and leave Clara defenseless. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the start. He turned and looked at the doctor, and there was something in his eyes that made Morrison take a step back. I'm going to visit Mrs. Patterson. The Patterson estate sat at the edge of town. Samuel rode up alone, unarmed, his hands visible on the reins. He wanted no misunderstandings, no excuses for violence. A servant met him at the door. I'm here to see Mrs. Patterson. Tell her Samuel Thornton would like a word. The servant's eyes widened, but he disappeared inside. 5 minutes later, Samuel was led into a parlor decorated with enough finery to make a king blush. Mrs. Patterson sat in a high-backed chair, her face a mask of cold fury. You have nerve coming here. I have more than nerve, ma'am. I have a proposition. Her eyes narrowed. I'm listening. Samuel remained standing. This war between us? It ends today, one way or another. The only way it ends is with that cursed child gone from this county. Clara isn't cursed. She's a sick little girl who needs help. And you're a grieving mother who's channeled her pain into hatred. Mrs. Patterson's face flushed. Don't you dare speak to me about grief. I know grief, ma'am. I buried my wife and daughter in the same week. I know what it feels like to have your whole world ripped away. But I didn't let it turn me into a monster. Get out of my house. Not until you hear what I have to say. Samuel took a step forward. Jacob made his own choices. He stole from me. He broke the law. I gave him every chance to make it right, and he refused. His death was a tragedy, but it wasn't my fault. And destroying an innocent child won't bring him back. Tears glistened in Mrs. Patterson's eyes, but her voice remained hard. You don't know anything about my son. I know he deserved better than to be used as an excuse for cruelty. I know he wouldn't want his mother terrorizing children in his name. And I know, Samuel's voice softened, I know that underneath all this anger, you're just a woman who misses her boy. Mrs. Patterson's mask cracked. For one moment, Samuel saw the person beneath the hatred. A mother, a grieving mother, broken and desperate and searching for someone to blame. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want peace. For Clara. For this town. For both of us. Call off your campaign. Let the girl heal. Let me raise her without interference. And maybe we can both find a way to move forward. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Mrs. Patterson spoke. You shot my man. He was about to burn down my barn, with people inside. He wasn't going to hurt anyone. I didn't know that. All I knew was that my family was in danger. I did what any man would do. Mrs. Patterson stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll call off the charges. Tell the mayor to drop the investigation. But I want something in return. Name it. I want to see her, the girl. I want to look her in the eye and decide for myself whether she's worth all this trouble. Samuel hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to keep Clara as far from this woman as possible. But he also knew that this was the only path to peace. Tomorrow, at my ranch, you come alone and you treat her with respect. Agreed? Mrs. Patterson's jaw tightened. Agreed. Samuel turned to leave. Thornton, he stopped. You really love that child, don't you? Samuel didn't turn around. More than I thought I could ever love anything again. He walked out into the fading light. Clara was waiting for him when he returned. What happened? Samuel dismounted and knelt beside her wheelchair. Mrs. Patterson is coming here tomorrow. She wants to meet you. Clara's face went pale. Why?
Because I asked her to. Because this is the only way to end this without more people getting hurt.
But she hates me.
She doesn't hate you. She hates what you represent. The chance I gave you that she thinks I should have given her son. Samuel took her hands in his. Clara, I need you to be brave tomorrow. Braver than you've ever been. Can you do that? Clara's chin lifted. I crawled through the desert for 2 days. I can handle one mean old lady. Despite everything, Samuel laughed. That's my girl. The words hung in the air between them. My girl. Clara's eyes widened. Samuel cleared his throat and stood up quickly. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He walked toward the house, his heart pounding. He hadn't meant to say it, but now that he had, he realized it was true. Clara Bennett was his girl now, and heaven help anyone who tried to take her away. Mrs. Patterson arrived at noon. She stepped out of her carriage alone, as promised. Her face was unreadable as she walked toward the house. Samuel met her at the door. She's in the garden. They walked together in silence. Clara sat in her wheelchair near the rose bushes, her hands folded in her lap. She looked small, fragile. But her eyes, those bright green eyes, burned with quiet defiance. Mrs. Patterson stopped a few feet away. For a long moment, the two simply looked at each other. The grieving mother and the orphaned child. Two people bound together by tragedy and circumstance. Then Clara spoke. I'm sorry about your son, ma'am. Mrs. Patterson blinked. What? I heard what happened, how he died. I'm sorry. I know what it's like to lose someone you love. The older woman's composure cracked. You don't know anything about... I know my mama died holding my hand. I know she told me to be brave. And I've tried so hard to be brave, but sometimes I'm just scared and sad and angry. Clara's voice trembled. I know the world isn't fair. I know bad things happen to good people. And I know that hating someone else won't make the pain go away. It just makes it heavier. Mrs. Patterson stood frozen. Then, slowly, she lowered herself until she was eye level with Clara. How old are you? 8, ma'am. 8 years old. And you talk like you've lived 100. Mama said suffering ages you faster than time. Something shifted in Mrs. Patterson's face. The hardness melted away, replaced by something raw and real. Your mama sounds like she was a remarkable woman. She was. She was the best person I ever knew. Tears spilled down Mrs. Patterson's cheeks. She reached out and took Clara's hands in hers. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry for everything I've done, everything I've said. You didn't deserve any of it. Clara squeezed her hands. Neither did you, ma'am. Neither did your son. Sometimes life just hurts, and we have to find a way to keep going anyway. Mrs. Patterson let out a sob, and then she did something no one expected. She pulled Clara into her arms and held her tight. Samuel watched from a distance, his throat tight with emotion. In that embrace, he saw something he hadn't dared to hope for. Redemption. Not just for Mrs. Patterson. For all of them. Mrs. Patterson stayed for 3 hours. She sat with Clara in the garden, asking questions, listening to answers, watching this remarkable child with eyes that had been closed by grief for far too long. When she finally rose to leave, her face was different, softer, more human. Mr. Thornton, may I speak with you privately? Samuel nodded and walked her to her carriage. I was wrong, she said quietly, about everything. That child in there, she's not cursed. She's blessed. And so are you.
for having the courage to save her when everyone else turned away.
Does this mean the attacks will stop?
The attacks will stop. The charges will be dropped. I'll speak to the mayor myself. She paused. I can't undo the harm I've caused, but I can make sure no more harm comes to either of you from this town.
Samuel studied her face. Why the change of heart?
Because she reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That pain doesn't give us the right to hurt others. That grief isn't an excuse for cruelty.
Mrs. Patterson's voice cracked, and that sometimes the people we're fighting against are just as broken as we are. She climbed into her carriage. Take care of that girl, Mr. Thornton. She's special. I know. The carriage rolled away, and Samuel stood watching until it disappeared over the horizon. Then he walked back to the garden. Clara was still sitting where he'd left her, but something was different. Her shoulders were trembling. Her hands were pressed against her face. Clara? She looked up. Tears streamed down her cheeks.
Mr. Samuel, I felt something.
His heart stopped. What do you mean?
My foot. When Mrs. Patterson was talking, I tried to move my toes, just like I always do. And this time I felt them. Just a little, just for a second. But I felt them.
Samuel dropped to his knees in front of her. Show me. Clara stared at her feet, her face twisted with concentration. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then her right big toe moved. Just a twitch. Just a fraction of an inch. But it moved. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. Oh my God. Clara looked up at him. Tears and hope mingled in her eyes. Does this mean I'm getting better? Samuel grabbed her hands. We need to get Dr. Morrison out here, right now. He ran toward the house, shouting for Henry. Behind him, Clara sat in her wheelchair, staring at her feet. Staring at that one small toe that had just changed everything. Dr. Morrison arrived within the hour. His examination was thorough, gentle, methodical. He tested Clara's reflexes, asked her to try moving different parts of her legs, pressed his fingers against her skin to check for sensation. When he was done, he sat back with a look of quiet amazement. Samuel, I need to speak with you outside. They stepped onto the porch. Well, Samuel demanded. It's remarkable. The nerve damage. It's healing. I've only seen this happen a handful of times in my entire career. The paralysis may not be permanent after all. Samuel gripped the porch railing. What does that mean? Will she walk again? I can't make any promises. Recovery from this kind of damage is slow and unpredictable. She might regain full mobility. She might only recover partial function. There's no way to know for certain. But there's hope. Dr. Morrison smiled. There's always been hope, Samuel. That little girl has more fight in her than anyone I've ever met. If anyone can beat this, it's her. Samuel let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for weeks. What do we do now? We push harder. More exercises, more physical therapy. I know a woman in Austin, a specialist in nerve damage. I'll write to her, see if she can come out and work with Clara. Whatever it costs, I don't care. Dr. Morrison put a hand on Samuel's shoulder. I know you don't. And that's exactly why that child has a chance. Clara was sitting up in bed when Samuel returned to her room. What did the doctor say? He pulled a chair up beside her. He said you're getting better. Really? Really. The damage to your nerves, it's healing. You might be able to walk again someday. Clara's face lit up like the sunrise, but just as quickly, a shadow crossed her features. What if it doesn't work? What if I get my hopes up and nothing happens? Samuel took her hand. Then we deal with it. Together. Whatever happens, Clara, you're not alone anymore. You understand?
I understand.
And you know what else?
What?
Even if you never walk again, it won't change how I feel about you. You're part of this family now, legs or no legs. That's not going to change. Clara's eyes filled with tears.
Family?
The word hung between them, heavy with meaning, fragile with hope. Samuel swallowed hard. I know I'm not your father. I know I can never replace your mama. But if you want, if you'll have me, I'd like to be something close. Clara threw her arms around his neck.
I'd like that too, Mr. Samuel. I'd like that more than anything.
Samuel held her tight, his eyes burning with tears he refused to let fall. 7 years of grief, 7 years of isolation. And now, finally, something that felt like healing. The weeks that followed were the happiest Samuel could remember. Clara's progress was slow, but steady. The specialist from Austin, a stern-faced woman named Dr. Rebecca Whitfield, arrived and immediately took charge of Clara's recovery. She's a fighter, Dr. Whitfield said after her first examination. I've seen grown men give up on less. But this one, she's got something special. Yes, Samuel agreed. She does. The exercises were grueling. Hours of stretching, massage, resistance training. Clara cried sometimes, screamed sometimes, wanted to quit more times than Samuel could count. But she never did. Push harder, Dr. Whitfield would say, and Clara would grit her teeth and push. Again, and Clara would try again. Don't stop, and Clara would keep going until her body gave out. One morning, 3 weeks after Dr. Whitfield's arrival, Clara did the impossible. She stood up. It was only for 2 seconds. Her legs buckled immediately, and Henry caught her before she hit the floor. But she had stood, on her own 2 feet.
I did it, she gasped. Did you see? I did it.
Samuel rushed forward and lifted her into his arms. I saw everything. Clara was laughing and crying at the same time.
I'm going to walk again, Mr. Samuel. I really am.
Yes, you are. I never doubted it for a second. Dr. Whitfield smiled, something she rarely did. Don't get too excited. You've got a long road ahead. But yes, Clara, you're going to walk. That night, Samuel did something he hadn't done in 7 years. He visited the graves on the hill. The summer moon cast silver light over the 2 stone markers beneath the old oak tree. Elizabeth Thornton, Lily Thornton, beloved wife and daughter.
Samuel knelt in the grass. I met someone, he said softly. A little girl. She's not like Lily, different in almost every way. But she's got the same fire, the same stubborn refusal to give up. He touched Elizabeth's headstone. I think you'd like her. She doesn't let me get away with anything. Calls me out when I'm being too hard. Makes me laugh when I forget how. Tears slipped down his cheeks. I'll never stop loving you, either of you. But I think it's time for me to start living again. Really living, not just existing. A breeze rustled through the oak leaves, soft, gentle, almost like an answer. Samuel stood. Watch over us, both of us. He walked back down the hill, and for the first time in 7 years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Progress continued through the summer. Clara's legs grew stronger every day. She graduated from standing for seconds to standing for minutes, from taking 1 shaky step to taking 5, from holding on to furniture to walking short distances with only a cane. Mrs. Patterson visited twice a week, bringing books and toys and homemade cookies. The woman who had once been Clara's greatest enemy had become something close to a grandmother. "You're spoiling her," Samuel said one afternoon,
as Mrs. Patterson presented Clara with yet another gift, a beautiful porcelain doll with real human hair. "Someone ought to spoil her. Lord knows she's earned it." Clara hugged the doll to her chest.
"Thank you, Mrs. Patterson."
"You can call me Margaret, child. We're past formalities now." Samuel watched the two of them together and marveled at how much could change in such a short time. But peace, he was learning, was never permanent. The stranger arrived on a Thursday. He rode up to the ranch just after noon, a lean man with cold eyes and an even colder smile. His clothes were expensive. His horse was pure black. Everything about him screamed danger. Samuel met him at the gate.
"Can I help you? Samuel Thornton?"
"That's right." The stranger dismounted. "My name is William Bennett. I'm looking for my daughter." Samuel's blood went cold. "Your daughter?" "Clara Bennett. I received word that she's been staying here. I've come to take her home." Samuel didn't move. "Clara told me she never knew her father." "Her mother told her that. It wasn't true." William's smile widened. "I've been searching for my little girl for years. Can you imagine my relief when I heard she was alive and well?" Everything about this man felt wrong. His too smooth voice, his too easy smile, the way his eyes calculated rather than felt. "Wait here." Samuel walked to the house. His heart was pounding. His mind was racing. Clara was in the parlor, practicing her steps with Dr. Whitfield. "Clara, I need to talk to you." She looked up, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What is it?" "There's a man outside. He says his name is William Bennett. He says he's your father." Clara's face went white.
"That's not possible. Mama said my father was dead."
"Are you sure?"
"She said he died before I was born. She never talked about him."
Clara's voice trembled.
"Mr. Samuel, what's happening?"
"I don't know, but I'm going to find out." He turned to Dr. Whitfield. "Stay with her. Don't let anyone in this room." "What are you going to do?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "Whatever I have to." He walked back outside. William Bennett was leaning against the fence, looking around the ranch with an expression of barely concealed greed. "Well, where is she?" "She's not ready to see you." "Not ready?" William's smile flickered. "I'm her father. She doesn't get to decide whether she's ready." "She's been through a traumatic experience. She needs time to process this." "What she needs is to come home with her family." Samuel stepped closer. "And where exactly is home? Because from what I understand, Clara's mother raised her alone, in poverty, while you were nowhere to be found." William's mask slipped for just a moment, replaced by something ugly, something cruel. "Her mother made certain choices. I don't have to justify myself to you." "No, you don't. But you do have to justify yourself to the law. I'm not releasing that child to anyone without proper documentation. Birth certificates, custody papers, proof that you are who you say you are." William's eyes narrowed. "That could take weeks." "Then I suggest you get started." The two men stared at each other, predator facing predator. Finally, William smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Fine. I'll be back with the papers. But understand this, Mr. Thornton. Clara is my daughter, my blood, and no amount of money or influence will keep her from me." He mounted his horse and rode away. Samuel watched him go, his stomach churning with dread. Something was very, very wrong. That night, Samuel sent Henry to town with a message for Sheriff Daniels. "Tell him I need information. Everything he can find on a man named William Bennett. Where he came from, what he's been doing, why he suddenly appeared looking for a daughter he supposedly abandoned years ago." "You don't trust him?" I don't trust anything about him. That man wasn't looking at Clara like a father looks at his child. He was looking at this ranch like a buyer looks at property. Henry nodded grimly. I'll leave tonight. Samuel spent the rest of the evening with Clara, trying to keep her calm while his own fears threatened to overwhelm him.
What if he really is my father?
Clara whispered in the darkness of her room.
What if I have to go with him?
You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go.
But if the law says...
The law says a lot of things. But sometimes the law is wrong. And when it's wrong, good people have to stand up and fight. Clara was quiet for a moment.
Would you fight for me?
Samuel took her hand. I'd burn the world down for you, Clara. Don't ever doubt that. She squeezed his fingers.
I don't. I never have.
Sleep was impossible that night. Samuel sat in his study, going over everything in his mind. William Bennett's sudden appearance, his too easy smile, the greed in his eyes when he looked at the ranch. This wasn't a father searching for his long-lost child. This was something else, something darker. The answer came 3 days later. Henry returned from town with Sheriff Daniels, both men looking grim. We found him, the sheriff said. William Bennett, real name William Crawford. He's a con man, Samuel. Been running scams across 3 states. Samuel's fists clenched. What kind of scams? The worst kind. He finds wealthy families with sick or orphan children, presents himself as a long-lost relative, uses legal loopholes to gain custody, and access to whatever money the family has. He's after my money. He's after everything. Once he gets legal control of Clara, he can challenge your right to keep her. Could drag you through courts for years. Drain your accounts dry with legal fees. Samuel's vision went red. That bastard. There's more. He's got a partner, a woman who poses as his wife. They've done this before, Samuel. In California, a man lost everything fighting them. His business, his home, the child he was trying to protect. What happened to the child? Sheriff Daniels hesitated. She died, 6 months after Crawford took her. The official story was illness, but he didn't need to finish. Samuel stood abruptly, his chair crashing backward. That man is not getting anywhere near Clara.
Samuel, you have to be careful. If you do anything illegal...
I don't care about legal. I care about keeping that little girl safe. The sheriff grabbed his arm. Listen to me.
Crawford's smart. He knows how to use the system. If you give him any excuse to claim you're unfit, he'll use it against you.
Then what am I supposed to do? Beat him at his own game. Get ahead of him. File for legal adoption before he can file for custody. Prove that Clara's been living with you, thriving with you, that you're the only family she's ever really known. Samuel's mind raced. How long would that take? Weeks, at least, maybe longer. And if he comes back before then? Then we stall. We ask for more documentation. We find every bureaucratic obstacle we can throw in his path. The sheriff met his eyes. You're not alone in this, Samuel. The whole town knows what you've done for that child. They won't let some con man waltz in and destroy her. Samuel thought of Clara, of her brave smile, her stubborn spirit, her small hand squeezing his in the darkness. He thought of Elizabeth and Lily, lost forever. He thought of the promise he'd made. Whatever it takes, he said quietly. Whatever it costs. I will not let that man take her. Clara knew something was wrong. She saw it in the way Samuel looked at her, a desperate protectiveness that hadn't been there before. She saw it in the way Mrs. Hawkins watched the windows, in the way Henry kept his rifle close. Tell me the truth, she said one evening, catching Samuel alone in his study. That man, William Bennett,
He's not really my father, is he?
Samuel hesitated. She was just a child. She'd already been through so much. But she deserved to know. No, he said. He's not. He's a con man, a criminal. He's trying to use you to get to my money. Clara's face didn't crumble like he expected. Instead, it hardened. What are we going to do? We're going to fight him, every way we can. I've already started the process to legally adopt you. Once that goes through, he won't have any claim. And if it doesn't go through in time? Samuel knelt in front of her. Then I'll find another way. I promise you, Clara, on my life, that man will not take you. He will not hurt you. As long as I'm breathing, you are safe. Clara threw her arms around him. I love you, Mr. Samuel. The words hit him like a thunderbolt. She'd never said it before. Neither of them had. But now, in this moment of fear and uncertainty, the truth poured out. Samuel held her tight, his voice rough with emotion. I love you too, Clara. More than you'll ever know. They stayed like that for a long time, father and daughter in everything but blood, holding on to each other while the storm gathered on the horizon. Whatever came next, they would face it together. William Crawford returned exactly 1 week later. This time, he wasn't alone. He rode up with a sheriff from another county, a man who clearly owed Crawford favors, and a stack of official-looking papers. I have custody documents, Crawford announced with that same cold smile. Signed by a judge in Austin. Clara Bennett is legally my daughter, and I'm taking her home. Samuel stood on his porch, Henry and 3 other ranch hands behind him. Those documents are fraudulent. That's a serious accusation. So is child trafficking, which is what you're really here for. Crawford's smile faltered. I don't know what lies you've been told. I know exactly who you are, William Crawford. I know about California, about the families you destroyed, about the child who died in your care. The out-of-county sheriff shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Thornton, I'm just here to execute a legal order. That order was obtained under false pretenses. I have evidence, witnesses, documentation of this man's crimes across 3 states. Samuel held up a folder. Sheriff Daniels from Cedar Creek is on his way with warrants for Crawford's arrest. If you help this man take that child, you'll be charged as an accomplice. The out-of-county sheriff's face went pale. Crawford grabbed his arm. Don't listen to him. He's bluffing. But Samuel wasn't bluffing. And when Sheriff Daniels rode up 5 minutes later, with 3 deputies and a federal marshal, William Crawford knew his scheme had failed. William Crawford, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and child endangerment. Crawford tried to run. He didn't get far. Henry tackled him to the ground. The deputies swarmed in. Within seconds, Crawford was in handcuffs, his too smooth face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Thornton. You can't protect her forever. Samuel walked up to him slowly. You're wrong, he said quietly. I can. And I will. He turned his back and walked into the house. Clara was waiting in the hallway, her face pale but determined. Is it over? Samuel pulled her into his arms. It's over. He's never going to hurt you. Never going to touch you. It's over, Clara. She buried her face against his chest and sobbed. But these were different tears. These were tears of relief. Tears of freedom. Tears of finally being safe. The days following Crawford's arrest blurred together like watercolors in the rain. Clara slept for 14 hours straight that first night, a deep, dreamless sleep that her body desperately needed. When she woke, Samuel was sitting in the chair beside her bed, just as he had been when she'd fallen asleep. You stayed. I wasn't going anywhere.
Clara reached for his hand. I had a dream. About Mama.
Samuel leaned forward. What kind of dream?
She was smiling, telling me I'd found my way home.
Clara's voice cracked.
She said she could rest now, because someone was taking care of me.
Samuel's throat tightened. She was right.
I know. Clara squeezed his fingers. I finally know.
The adoption papers arrived 3 weeks later. Judge Harrison came out to the ranch personally to oversee the proceedings. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes, who had known Samuel since he was a boy.
"This is highly unusual," the judge said, settling into a chair in Samuel's study. "Adoption hearings normally take place in a courtroom. Clara's been through enough. I didn't want to drag her into town for another spectacle." The judge nodded slowly. "I've heard what happened. The whole county has. That con man would have destroyed her life if you hadn't stopped him." "I did what any decent person would do." "No, Samuel. You did what very few people would have the courage to do." The judge pulled out a stack of documents. "I've reviewed everything. The testimony from Dr. Morrison, the statements from Mrs. Hawkins and your ranch hands, even a letter from Margaret Patterson, which I admit surprised me considerably." Samuel almost smiled. "She's changed." "So I gathered." The judge spread the papers across the desk. "Everything is in order. The only thing left is Clara's consent." Samuel went to fetch her.
Clara was waiting in the parlor, dressed in her best dress, a blue cotton thing that Mrs. Hawkins had sewn especially for this occasion. Her legs were stronger now. She could walk short distances with just a cane. But for this moment, she sat in her wheelchair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "The judge wants to talk to you," Samuel said.
I know. Clara took a deep breath. Mr. Samuel?
"Yes?"
Whatever happens in there, whatever the judge decides, I want you to know something.
Her green eyes met his.
You're already my father, in every way that matters. Papers don't change that.
Samuel knelt beside her chair. "No, they don't. But papers make it official. Papers make it permanent. And permanent is what I want." He wheeled her into the study. Judge Harrison smiled when he saw Clara. "Hello there, young lady. You must be the famous Clara Bennett I've heard so much about."
Yes, sir.
"I understand you've had quite an adventure."
I suppose you could call it that.
The judge chuckled. "Tell me something, Clara. Do you want Samuel Thornton to adopt you, to become your legal father?" Clara didn't hesitate.
More than anything in the world.
"And do you understand what that means? That you'll take his name, live in his home, be part of his family forever?"
Yes, sir, I understand.
"Do you have any doubts, any concerns?" Clara looked at Samuel. He looked back at her. Between them passed a lifetime of unspoken words: gratitude, love, fear, hope, healing.
No doubts,
Clara said softly.
Not anymore.
The judge nodded. "Very well. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Texas, I hereby grant this adoption petition." He signed the final document with a flourish. "Congratulations, Clara Thornton. You have a father." Clara's breath caught. Thornton. Clara Thornton. She had a name. A real name. A family name. Samuel lifted her from the wheelchair and held her tight. "Welcome home, daughter." Clara buried her face against his shoulder. "I've been home for months, Papa. I just didn't know what to call it." Papa. The word broke something open in Samuel's chest. Something he'd thought was dead forever. "Papa," Clara said again, testing the sound of it. "I like that." "So do I." Samuel's voice was rough. "So do I." Mrs. Hawkins cried for an hour. She bustled around the kitchen, preparing a celebratory dinner, wiping her eyes every few minutes with a corner of her apron. "Clara Thornton," she kept saying. "Clara Thornton. Oh, that sounds just right. Just exactly right." Henry and the ranch hands set up tables in the yard. Margaret Patterson arrived with 3 pies and a crate of champagne. Dr. Morrison brought his wife and daughters. Sheriff Daniels came with his family. Even Dr. Whitfield, who had completed Clara's therapy just 2 weeks before, made the trip from Austin. It was the biggest gathering the Thornton Ranch had seen in 7 years, and at the center of it all sat Clara, no longer in her wheelchair, but in a regular chair at the head of the table, her cane propped beside her. "Speech!" someone called out. "Speech for Mr. Thornton!" Samuel stood slowly. He wasn't a man of many words, never had been, but this moment demanded something. "Most of you know my story," he began. "You know what I lost. You know how I closed myself off from the world. For 7 years, I thought that was the only way to survive. That if I didn't let anyone in, I couldn't get hurt again." He looked down at Clara. "Then a little girl crawled up to my gate, half dead, broken, asking for nothing but one night of shelter." His voice cracked. "I didn't want to help her. I told myself it wasn't my problem. But something wouldn't let me walk away." Samuel paused, gathering himself. This child, this incredible, stubborn, brave child, she didn't just come into my life. She broke down every wall I built. She showed me that love isn't a weakness. It's the only thing that gives life meaning. He raised his glass. "To Clara, my daughter, the best thing that ever happened to me." "To Clara!" the crowd echoed. Clara's eyes glistened with tears. "Your turn," Samuel said softly. Clara shook her head. "I don't know what to say." "Say whatever's in your heart." Clara looked around the table, at all these people who had come to celebrate her. People who had once been strangers, people who were now family. "When Mama died," she said quietly, "I thought my life was over. I thought I'd be alone forever. The town threw me out like garbage. I crawled through the desert with broken legs, and I honestly didn't think I'd survive." She reached for Samuel's hand. "But then I found this house, this man, and everything changed." Her voice strengthened. "I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're broken, who stays when everything falls apart, who loves you when you've got nothing to offer but yourself." Clara smiled through her tears. "I found my family, and I'm never letting go." The applause was thunderous, but Clara barely heard it. All she heard was the steady beat of her own heart, and the knowledge that, for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she belonged. The party lasted until well past midnight. When the last guests had gone and the ranch fell quiet, Samuel found Clara standing on the porch, standing, on her own 2 feet, without her cane. "You should be in bed." "I couldn't sleep." Clara turned to look at him. "Too much happiness. I don't know what to do with it." Samuel walked over and stood beside her. "You get used to it, eventually." "Did you? After Elizabeth and Lily died? Did you ever think you'd feel happy again?" "No, I was sure I wouldn't. I'd convinced myself that happiness was just something other people got, something I'd lost the right to." "What changed?" Samuel looked at her, this child who had transformed his life. "You did. You showed me that hearts can heal, that second chances are real, that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn." Clara leaned against him. "Mama used to say that, about the dawn." She must have been a remarkable woman.
She was. You would have liked her.
I'm sure I would have. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead.
Papa,
Yes?
do you think Mama can see us? From wherever she is?
Samuel considered the question carefully. I don't know for certain, but I'd like to think so. I'd like to think she's watching over you, knowing you're safe, knowing you're loved. Clara nodded slowly.
I talk to her sometimes, in my head. I tell her about you, about Mrs. Hawkins and the ranch and everything that's happened.
What do you tell her about me? Clara smiled.
That you're grumpy and stubborn and you never smile enough.
But that underneath all that, you've got the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. Samuel's chest tightened. That's quite an assessment. It's the truth. Mama always said the truth was the most important thing. She was right. Clara turned to face him fully. Papa, I need to tell you something. What is it? Tomorrow morning, I want to try something. Something I've been practicing in secret with Dr. Whitfield. Samuel's brow furrowed. What kind of something? I want to walk to the graves, Elizabeth and Lily's graves, on the hill, without my cane, without help. Clara's eyes blazed with determination. I want to introduce myself to them, as your daughter. Samuel's breath caught. Clara, that's a long walk. The hill is steep. If you fall, I won't fall. I've been practicing for weeks. I'm ready. But, Papa, Clara took his hands. I need to do this. I need them to know that I'm not trying to replace them, that I'm just adding to the family, continuing what they started. Samuel stared at her. This child who constantly surprised him, who pushed herself beyond every limit, who refused to accept defeat. You're sure? I'm sure. He nodded slowly. Then we'll do it together. First thing tomorrow. Clara threw her arms around him. Thank you, Papa. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for asking. Samuel held her tight. Elizabeth would have loved you, Clara. And Lily. Lily would have been so excited to have a sister. I wish I could have known them. You will. Through me. Through my memories. Through the love that never died. Clara pulled back and wiped her eyes. I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Yes, it is. She walked toward the door, slowly, carefully, but steadily. Clara? She turned. I'm proud of you. Prouder than I've ever been of anyone. Clara smiled. I'm proud of you too, Papa. For not giving up. On life, on love. She paused. On me. She disappeared inside. Samuel stayed on the porch for a long time, staring up at the stars. And for the first time in 7 years, he felt truly at peace. Morning came with golden light and birdsong. Clara was already dressed when Samuel knocked on her door. Her face was pale, but determined. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the doorframe. Ready? She nodded. Ready. They walked to the back of the house together. Clara moved slowly, each step deliberate, each movement calculated. But she didn't stop, didn't hesitate, just kept putting one foot in front of the other. Mrs. Hawkins watched from the kitchen window, her hand pressed against her heart. Henry and the ranch hands gathered near the barn, silent witnesses to this moment. Even Margaret Patterson, who had arrived early with fresh bread, stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the small figure making her way toward the hill. The path was uneven, rocky, difficult even for someone with healthy legs. Clara stumbled once, twice. Each time, Samuel reached out to steady her. Each time, she shook her head and kept going. You're doing it, Samuel said quietly. You're really doing it. Almost there. Clara's face was slick with sweat. Her legs screamed with exhaustion. But the graves were just ahead now. Just a few more steps. 5 steps. 4. 3. 2. 1. Clara stopped in front of the 2 headstones, breathing hard, tears streaming down her face. She had made it, on her own 2 feet, all the way up the hill. Samuel stood beside her, his own eyes burning with tears he no longer tried to hide.
"Elizabeth?"
Clara said softly, her voice trembling.
"Lily? I know you don't know me, but I know you. Through your husband, through your father, through all the love he still carries for you."
She reached out and touched Elizabeth's headstone.
"I'm not trying to take your place. No one ever could. But I wanted you to know, I'm going to take care of him, just like you did."
I'm going to make sure he laughs again, smiles again, lives again. Clara turned to Lily's headstone. "And Lily, I always wanted a sister. I know you're not here anymore, but in my heart, you are. You always will be. We're family now. All of us. Together." She stepped back and looked at Samuel. "Is that okay? What I said?" Samuel couldn't speak, couldn't find words for the emotion choking his throat. He simply nodded. And then he did something he hadn't done at these graves in 7 years. He smiled. A real smile. Warm and genuine and full of hope. "They would have loved you," he whispered. "Every bit as much as I do." Clara took his hand. "Let's go home, Papa." They walked down the hill together, father and daughter, past and future, grief and hope intertwined. Behind them, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the old oak tree. Almost like a blessing. Almost like goodbye. 1 year later, Clara Thornton ran across the yard, her bare feet kicking up dust, her laughter ringing through the summer air. "Catch me if you can, Papa!" Samuel chased after her, pretending to be slower than he was, delighting in the sound of her joy. She ran, really ran. No wheelchair, no cane, no trace of the paralysis that had once stolen her legs. Dr. Morrison called it a miracle. Dr. Whitfield called it determination. Mrs. Hawkins called it the power of love. Clara just called it Tuesday. "Got you!" Samuel caught her around the waist and swung her into the air. She shrieked with delight. "That's not fair! Your legs are longer!" "Life's not fair. Didn't anyone ever teach you that?" "You did. About 100 times." Samuel set her down, breathing hard. "When did you get so fast?" "When did you get so slow?" They grinned at each other. Mrs. Hawkins appeared on the porch. "Lunch is ready, and wash those feet before you come inside, Clara Thornton. I just mopped the floors." "Yes, ma'am." Clara bounced toward the house, pausing to look back at Samuel. "Coming?" "In a minute." She nodded and disappeared inside. Samuel stood in the yard, looking around at the ranch that had once felt like a prison. The same fields, the same barn, the same white house. But everything was different now, because he was different. A hand touched his shoulder. Samuel turned to find Margaret Patterson standing behind him. She had become a regular presence at the ranch over the past year, dropping by for dinner, teaching Clara to knit, filling the grandmother role that Clara had never had. "You're thinking too hard," Margaret said. "Old habit. One you should break," she smiled. "That girl in there, she's transformed this place, transformed you." "She saved me. I was just existing before she came, going through the motions, waiting to die." "And now?" Samuel looked toward the house, where Clara's laughter echoed through the open windows. "Now I'm living. Really living. For the first time in 7 years." Margaret squeezed his shoulder.
Elizabeth would be proud. You know that, don't you?
I like to think so. I know so. I knew Elizabeth, remember? She was all heart, that one. And she'd be the first person to tell you that love isn't a finite resource. It doesn't run out. It multiplies.
Samuel nodded slowly. Clara said something like that once, early on, about how hearts can heal.
Smart girl.
The smartest. Takes after her mother. Margaret raised an eyebrow.
Which mother?
Samuel smiled. Both of them. That night, after dinner, Clara asked Samuel to tell her about Elizabeth and Lily again. It had become a ritual between them, this sharing of memories, this weaving together of past and present. Every story brought them closer. Every memory made Clara more a part of the family that had come before.
"Tell me about the night Lily was born," Clara said, curling up on the sofa beside him.
Samuel leaned back and closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him. It was raining. Hardest rain I'd ever seen. Dr. Morrison was stuck on the other side of the creek, couldn't get across because the bridge had washed out. So it was just me and Elizabeth, in this very room, with the storm raging outside. Were you scared? Terrified. I didn't know the first thing about delivering a baby. But Elizabeth, she just looked at me with those calm eyes of hers and said, "Samuel Thornton, you faced down rustlers and rattlesnakes and the meanest cattle in Texas. You can handle this." Clara smiled. Did you handle it? Barely. Lily came into the world screaming her head off, and I nearly fainted. But when I held her for the first time, Samuel's voice caught. When I held her, everything else disappeared. All the fear, all the uncertainty. There was just this tiny, perfect person, and the knowledge that I would do anything to protect her.
Clara was quiet for a moment. "That's how I feel about you," she said softly. "Protected. Safe. Like nothing bad can ever touch me as long as you're here."
Samuel pulled her close. Nothing will. I promise.
"I know, Papa. I've always known."
They sat together in comfortable silence, the fire crackling softly, the night settling around them like a blanket.
"Papa?" "Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For keeping me. For becoming my family."
Thank you for letting me.
Clara looked up at him. "Can I tell you a secret?"
Always.
That first night, when I was crawling toward your gate, I almost gave up. My arms were giving out. My legs were useless. I thought, maybe it's easier to just lie down and let it end.
Samuel's heart clenched.
But then I saw a light in one of your windows. Just a small light, but it was enough. It reminded me of something Mama used to say.
What did she say? Clara smiled.
She said, "As long as there's one light still burning, there's a reason to keep going."
Samuel's eyes blurred with tears.
"You were my light, Papa. Before I even knew your name. Before I knew anything about you. You were the light that kept me crawling."
Samuel held her tighter. "And you," he whispered, "you were the light I didn't know I needed. The light that brought me back to life." They stayed like that for a long time, father and daughter, two broken people who had found healing in each other. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, infinite and eternal. And inside, in the warm heart of a home that had once been empty, love flourished like wildflowers after rain. Clara Thornton had arrived at that gate as a dying child with nothing but hope. Now she stood, really stood, as the daughter of the richest man in 3 counties, a man who would burn the world down to protect her, a man who had learned, through her, that the heart's capacity for love was boundless. She had walked through fire, She had crawled through desert. She had faced death and cruelty and abandonment. And she had emerged stronger, braver, more alive than ever before. Because Clara Thornton had discovered the most important truth of all. Home wasn't a place. It was the people who loved you. And she had finally, after all her suffering, all her struggling, all her stubborn refusal to give up, she had finally found her home.